All right, good evening, and thanks for joining us here this evening. So tonight, I'm going to be giving a persuasion speech on a specific program that's called Adobe Voco, and how that relates to business ethics within the consumers. But first, before we get into that, I want you to imagine that you yourself, you're given a speech to 30 people, and it's about something that you're passionate about, and it doesn't matter what it is. But you're giving the speech to 30 people, and it's something that you prepared for. And as you're giving the speech, you notice a couple people are taking video of it. And you get congratulated after your speech because it was so well prepared and done and everything else. And by the time you get home, this video is uploaded onto YouTube. And during the middle of the speech, there's a sequence of words about a minute long that you didn't utter. You didn't pronounce, you didn't actually say those things. In fact, it goes against what you're talking about in your passion. Luckily, because you had 30 people in the audience, they can vouch that that wasn't entirely true, that the video that's uploaded on YouTube isn't accurate. But what if you were talking with somebody one-on-one and they were recording it either through audio or visual means, and it was a conversation maybe about a business agreement or something to do with a personal relationship, and then suddenly that audio gets uploaded onto the internet and it's consumed by all the people through social media, and it contains words that you never said, but it's your voice, it's your dialect, it's your tone.
So is it your lip movement too?
It's even your lip movement. How would you feel about something like that? Because this technology currently exists. Now, technology has moved pretty fast in the last 30 years. I mean, if you think about it, the Apple II came out in 1984, 83. And then now we possess a phone, a smartphone, that's over 1,000 times more powerful than the computers that sent the astronauts to the moon. So it has all of this ability to take video, audio record, and edit in the process. So Adobe Photoshop, which has been controversial in its existence anyway, with its ability to manipulate photos, either through adding people together or taking weight off around a chin. I could probably use it from time to time. But they've introduced something that's called Adobe Voco. Adobe Voco is a voice modulation software, and it was developed out of the need for movie studios and podcasters who bring people onto their show, or they're recording something that they don't get the line quite right, or they don't say something exactly perfect. So they created the software to allow the editor the ability to edit a person's voice without that person being present. So they don't have to rebook an actor. They don't have to have somebody come back onto their podcast. They don't have to readjust the mic or make sure the climate's right or everything else that's entitled with the sensitivity when it comes to audio recording. So with the BBC article, it showed the different voice modulation software that is applicable with this program. They literally took a comedian's voice, and it's a popular comedian, it's Jordan Peele. They had him, in the video he said a joke, and then they started to play with the joke a little bit by removing certain nouns out of the joke, and then they just erased the joke entirely and had him say something else. And of course, it blew everybody's mind. They erupted in applause and cheering that technology is able to get to this. But I'm here to tell you that developing this technology and producing it to the consumer in mass without any ethical restrictions is just highly irresponsible on the fact of the corporation that's producing it. So moving on, reading about a panel of different media philosophies, there's two commonalities when it gets into the ethical responsibility for companies producing media technology. The first that it focuses around is intellectual property, right? So if somebody's producing something that's their creation, they're going to present it to the world within a month's time, maybe a couple weeks' time. Somebody else has already replicated that same thing. Maybe just it's a little bit different, so now you're getting into royalty issues and the actual ownership of that specific technology. And the other thing is privacy concerns, as we already have with social media and other forms of technology that we interact with, right? How much information are we given to this? How much information is out there in the web without our knowing? But those are the two primary concerns when we're talking about technology that's being produced in a media format. To me, this issue is both of those issues simultaneously. It's a privacy issue because if this technology is enabled with anybody's ability to use it, any one-on-one conversation, no matter where it's happening, can be affected by it. And two, intellectual property, if Chris and I, for example, were gonna scheme up this great new company that's, gonna save the world, water consumption, and then I leave, and then he recorded the conversation, he changes the conversation to say that he created it, and then I just agreed with him, he could come away with a patent out of it, and then all of the fame and glory that comes out of saving the world on water consumption. So, from that, what further effect can this have on society, right? So the Association of Computation Machinery, and it's also a journal, believe that technology produced by these companies has no responsibility to ethics. Otherwise, they're devoid of ethics because they're neutral. The technology is produced, it's how the consumer interacts with the technology to choose to do for bad or good. If we're going to develop Twitter and we're going to post great things on Twitter, then that's a good choice made by the person. However, if somebody chooses to use Twitter in a negative light and say inflammatory remarks about somebody, that's that person's choice to do so. However, it's not necessarily Twitter's fault. And that's what that panel has discussed and agreed upon. However, I believe that socio-technical, that basically these companies enter in a socio-technical agreement with the consumers that they're making the pieces for. That even though it has the ability to be used in a neutral fashion or a good or a bad fashion, it still has the ability to experience all of those things on those ranges. And therefore, regardless of the inability of harm or it's just being created for good, there still has to be recognized, is this worth it? Is this something that a consumer should be using in a right way if we don't properly restrict it or control this? So from that, just a couple of things that could be used with this technology and how it affects our society today. Fake news, right? So as we're uncovering allegation after allegation in our House of Representatives right now on the federal level, from sexual advances and irresponsible relationships to what's being said in the media by our current President of the United States and other reporting news sources, to everything else. What if in an instance in today's world that somebody's comment is misconstrued, manipulated, said to say something completely different, and then posted worldwide to 330 million people in this country? The irresponsibility of having this technology exist in this point in time without any restrictions, licensing, or digital watermarking is an absolute danger to where we're at. So the resolution to what I propose for these companies to put into technology like this is on a 3-level. Licensing, which would have a user be licensed to use that technology so you can track who's using it. 2, digital watermarking. So when they affect an audio recording, when they affect a video recording, that there's always going to be a synopsis within that media that you can trace back, hey, this has been manipulated through this program. And lastly, just simple restriction, right? We license engines when they go out to the other world to end users in certain countries. We put duties on goods that we're bringing into the country. We have registered cars and we have to get driver's license. We have to do all of these certain things to be able to interact with some of the goods that we have in our very lives. And some of it's just mechanical, it's not even digital. So why couldn't we have these kind of restrictions on something as scary as this? It's not quite Skynet becoming self-aware from Terminator, but it's the technology that's pretty close to it. So, questions, comments, concerns?
Could you still sue